walked in like a shadow, unnoticed and unbothered, until they saw the scars. Then the laughter began. They mocked her boots, her silence, and the twisted skin running up her jaw. But they didn't see what hid beneath the old jacket. Not until a hardened war veteran dropped his drink and froze mid-step. His face drained white, not from fear, but recognition. And suddenly, nobody dared laugh again. Subscribe to Silent Stories for powerful, true-to-life tales that reveal what lies beneath the surface. They didn't know her name. To most, she was just the scarred lady who didn't talk much at the rural indoor shooting range 20 minutes outside Portland. She came in Tuesdays and Thursdays like clockwork, wore the same washed-out denim jacket, sleeves pulled low, collar turned up. Her hair, short, practical and iron gray, stuck out from a knit cap that had seen better days. She rarely spoke, just signed in, selected her lane, and shot like she was carving silence into steel. Folks whispered. Some were cruel, some curious, most indifferent. The older men nodded politely. The younger crowd laughed behind her back. She never responded. Until today. Today, the laughter got a little louder. A lean guy in his early 20s, wearing a tactical operator hoodie and Oakley's indoors, snorted as she passed. "Hey, Grandma," he said loud enough for his buddies to hear. "You lose your knitting club or you out here to audition for John Wick's grandma?" His friends laughed, but she didn't pause. She just loaded her box of .45 ACP rounds into a tray and moved down the line, selecting lane 7 without a word. Another guy called out, "Hey, careful. The recoil might snap her in half." They laughed harder. Even the range officer at the front desk let a chuckle slip. He should have known better. He'd seen her shoot before, but he, like the others, forgot. That's how forgettable she made herself, until she held a weapon. She stepped into lane 7 like she was walking into a memory. Every movement was methodical. She unpacked her old Springfield 1911, steel frame glinting under the buzzing fluorescence. Her hands, scarred, knotted with age and healing, loaded each round with the kind of quiet precision that only comes from repetition. Not hobbyist repetition. War-born repetition. The young guys in lane 5 and 6 were still snickering when she raised the pistol and fired. 8 rounds. 8 clean hits. The center of the target collapsed inward, a single blackened ring of destruction. No widespread. No flinch. No rush. The laughter stopped. She reloaded. 8 more. Tight. Controlled. Lethal. Someone finally muttered, "Damn." Then came the moment none of them expected. She pushed up the sleeve of her jacket to wipe sweat from her forearm. That's when it caught his eye, the old man sitting on the bench in the corner, drinking black coffee from a thermos with a chipped Marine Corps logo. His hand twitched. His eyes went wide. The coffee fell from his grip and shattered on the concrete. He stood. He stepped forward, ignoring the others. "That tattoo," he whispered. Everyone turned. The woman slowly looked up. Her sleeve had slipped far enough to reveal part of a dark, faded tattoo just above her wrist. An angular snake coiled around a parachute with the letters TFV-28. The Marine stared, blinking like he was trying to wake up from a dream. "Task Force Viper, 28, he said aloud. She looked him in the eye. "Ballad, Iraq. Forward Base Sentinel," she replied calmly. He stumbled back a step, breath caught in his throat. You were with them. Your Echo Blue 3. She nodded once. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. Now no one was laughing. The young guy who had mocked her just minutes ago shuffled awkwardly. "Wait, what's Task Force Viper?" The Marine turned slowly to face him. "Only the most classified Joint Ops unit from 2003 to 2010. Half their missions don't even have names. We thought Echo Blue 3 died in 2007. Car bomb. Nothing left but fire and dirt." The woman holstered her pistol and pulled her sleeve back down. "I'm still dead," she said quietly. "Far as the Army's concerned." The young men around her stood silent now. The range officer looked pale. The Marine walked closer and offered his hand. "No one forgets Echo Blue 3, he said, voice thick. "Welcome home." She took his hand briefly. Her grip was strong. dry, grounded in something deeper than time. As she packed up her gear, the room stayed quiet, not out of discomfort but reverence. The young mocker tried once more. "Ma'am, I didn't mean anything by—" She cut him off with a glance. "You meant everything by it. That's the problem," she replied. And with that, she walked out into the misting rain. Outside, her truck, a rusted 1989 Ford with a cracked rear window, rumbled to life. She pulled away, leaving behind silence, disbelief, and the unmistakable sting of shame in those who had left. The Marine stayed standing, staring at the empty lane she'd left behind. "They don't make 'em like her anymore," he said. The others nodded, still processing what had just happened. But no one, not even once, dared call her grandma again. The rain hadn't let up when she pulled off the highway, gravel crunching beneath the tires of her old Ford. She stopped at a lonely diner near the county line, the kind of place where time clings to the walls with grease and jukebox memories. Inside, the bell above the door chimed, and a tired waitress gave her a faint nod without asking for an order. The woman took her regular seat in the corner booth, back to the wall, eyes on the exits. That habit had never left. Her scarf, still damp from the mist, clung to her throat, but she didn't care. Her thoughts were elsewhere. Back in the desert, in the dust-choked silence of that night in Ballad when her team never came home. She remembered every face, every voice that got buried in the rubble of that convoy ambush. Echo Blue was more than a name, it was family, and the Army had sealed them in a report titled "Personnel Lost in Action, Presumed Deceased." She had walked out of that hellhole with half her face burned, a broken shoulder, and a dog tag clenched in her teeth. But they erased her anyway, buried her under protocol. By the time she clawed her way through 3 hospitals and 2 black site interrogations, the world had moved on. Her name was gone. Her unit was a ghost. And she chose to stay that way until today. Something in the old Marine's voice cracked open a locked door she'd welded shut years ago. It wasn't just recognition. It was memory shared, a truth confirmed. She stirred her coffee slowly, watching the clouds roll outside the window. She hadn't been Echo Blue 3 in nearly 2 decades. But the way that boy looked at her, terrified, ashamed, it reminded her that silence could only protect so much. A mission had failed that day not because of enemy fire, but because a politician pulled the plug mid-operation. 24 men and women vanished for optics. No flags, no honors, just silence. She had always blamed herself. If she had stayed 1 more minute, fired 1 more round, maybe they would have made it. But the truth was more complicated. She'd received a message once, years after. Came through a back channel, encoded, nearly indecipherable. It only said, "They're watching. Stay buried. For now." And so she did. But now, after the Marine recognized her, she knew for now had ended. Something was shifting. Her scars had never itched this badly in years. The tattoo on her arm burned as if warning her. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out an old key. A military issue, long stripped of any tags. It belonged to a storage unit she hadn't opened since 2010. Inside it lay her old gear, field reports, encrypted drives, and 1 final letter from a name she hadn't dared utter in 15 years. Commander Rafe Maddox, the last man who saw her team alive. If Maddox was still out there, then maybe the truth hadn't died in that explosion. Maybe someone wanted her to wake up. And maybe that boy's laughter, foolish as it was, had just triggered something far bigger than he'd ever understand. She finished her coffee, left a generous tip, and stepped back into the cold. She didn't drive straight home. She turned east instead, toward the storage unit, toward the past, toward whatever the hell came next. Because now, after years of silence, she was ready to speak. And if the government had a problem with that, they'd better remember exactly who they buried. Echo Blue 3 wasn't just alive. She was reactivating. The road stretched long and empty as she drove east, the hum of the tires against the wet pavement like a low, steady drumbeat in her ears. Her fingers tightened on the steering wheel, the key to the storage unit cold and sharp in her palm. It had been over 15 years since she'd laid eyes on that old corrugated steel door, and even longer since she'd felt the weight of her old life pressing down so heavily on her shoulders. The sky was a thick slate of gray, mirroring her mood. She hadn't planned on returning to this. She hadn't planned on being noticed. But fate, it seemed, didn't give a damn about her plans. She reached the outskirts of the city before noon, navigating through half-forgotten streets and industrial alleys where even the graffiti looked tired. The storage facility sat behind a rusted chain-link fence topped with barbed wire, a relic from a time when people trusted locks more than algorithms. She entered her old code, the keypad beeping slowly as if unsure it still worked. The lock clicked, the door creaked, and there it was, Unit 117 frozen in time. Dust greeted her like an old enemy as she stepped inside. The scent of oil, leather, and aged metal hung in the air. She flicked on the flashlight and swept it across boxes labeled in black marker, AF medical files, op reddest, classified, and finally, a dented steel trunk marked simply, Echo Blue. Her breath caught. Slowly, almost reverently, she knelt and unlatched the trunk. Inside, her old tactical vest lay neatly folded, along with field maps, encrypted flash drives, a sidearm sealed in plastic, and, at the very bottom, a letter. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. The handwriting was unmistakable. Rafe Maddox. If you're reading this, it means they found you, or you let yourself be found. Either way, I'm sorry. I tried to keep your name off the grid. They erased Echo Blue, buried us under layers of operations with no paper trail. But we weren't the only ones. They called it Fireline Protocol. We were just the beta test. You were never supposed to survive. But you did. And that scared them. They're still watching, but they're slipping. Intel shows cracks in their command structure. Something's brewing. If you still have that fire in you, find me. I'm off-grid, but I left a trail. Your first breadcrumb is in Albany. Civilian name, Benjamin Cross. He's ex-Intel, he'll know the rest. Trust no one else. Not even former allies. Some sold out. And some were always snakes. Rafe. She sat back, the letter heavy in her hands. Fireline Protocol. The words clanged like a gunshot in her brain. She remembered whispers of it, rumors of Black Ops teams used for missions so dirty, not even Joint Command wanted knowledge of them. Echo Blue had been one of the first, and when the mission went sideways, they were sacrificed. Disposable. But she wasn't disposable. Not anymore. She took the drives, the vest, the sidearm, and Rafe's letter, loading them into her car before sealing the unit again. Albany. That's where she had to go. But she wouldn't go unprepared. That evening, she stopped in a small town outside Scroon Lake. It was quiet, the kind of place where people still waved at strangers. She booked a room under an old alias, Kara Jensen, a name she hadn't used since '09, and spread her gear across the bed. The drives were encrypted beyond standard military grade, but she still had the software to unlock them. One by one, they opened. Redacted files, mission logs, satellite images, names she hadn't heard in over a decade. And buried deep in a folder labeled EB-117 Sivrep was a grainy surveillance photo. A man, late 50s, bearded, standing outside a worn-down bookshop in downtown Albany. Time-stamped 4 days ago. Caption, Cross, B. Known ASIC, RM. The hunt had already begun. She leaned back, adrenaline mixing with dread. If they were watching Cross, then they knew he was the key. That meant they were either trying to protect him or planning to silence him. She had to move fast. But before she could pack up, her burner phone buzzed. Unknown number. She let it ring out. Then it buzzed again. And again. Finally, she answered, saying nothing. A voice crackled on the line. Old. Familiar. You're late, Blue 3. They're on me. You've got 48 hours. Don't bring a tail. Then silence. She stood, phone still in hand, heart racing. Benjamin Cross was still alive and running. If they were tracking him, it meant someone inside the system still feared the truth getting out. She burned the hotel's Wi-Fi chip, ditched the phone, and was back on the road within 10 minutes. Every instinct screamed that she was already being followed, so she took the back roads, through forests and quiet farmland, tracing shadows instead of highways. By morning, she reached Albany. The bookshop was still there, Cross and Quill, nestled between a pawn shop and a shuttered cafe. She scoped the area from a bus station roof 2 blocks away. 2 men in black coats lingered outside, pretending to drink coffee. Too stiff, too alert, not locals. She changed into civilian clothes, slipped on a knit hat, and entered through the back alley, bypassing the front entrance. The old freight door groaned, but inside, the shop was empty, dusty, quiet. Then a voice from the shadows. "I told you not to bring a tail." Benjamin Cross stepped out from behind a tall shelf, aged and gaunt, eyes sunken but sharp. "They're listening to police bands now. They tagged my location when I used a burner. We've got 5 minutes." She pulled out Rafe's letter. Cross's expression changed. Less suspicion, more sorrow. "I warned him years ago to destroy this, but he hoped you'd come. You always were the stubborn one. Come on." Basement. They descended a narrow staircase into a hidden room reinforced with lead plating and Faraday shielding. Maps covered the walls. Dossiers. A war board. Names. Operation Fireline wasn't a protocol, it was a purge. Over 75 names, all operatives tied to failed or disavowed missions, most declared Kia or missing. Some had simply vanished. Others were framed, and a few, like her, had gone to ground. "The tattoo," Cross said quietly, pointing to her forearm. "Only 10 people had that. Only 1 lived. You. That's why that vet froze." He recognized it. Echo Blue was the prototype. They didn't think anyone would ever see it again. Now that someone has, they'll move fast. "What's their endgame?" she asked. "Control. Eliminate the old ghosts. Clean the board before a new regime takes power." But they made a mistake. They let one of us live. She leaned over the table, scanning faces, locations, red circles. "Where's Rafe?" Cross hesitated. "Last known location. Carthage, Missouri. 3 months ago. Off-grid. May not have made it. Then I'm going to find him. Or find who silenced him." He nodded. "You'll need this." He handed her a sealed black envelope. Inside was a single photo. Her old unit, Echo Blue, in the sands of Iraq, arms slung over shoulders, grinning. On the back, one line was written in Rafe's hand. "Truth never dies, it waits." The next 24 hours were a blur. She slipped from Albany undetected, changed vehicles twice, and rerouted through the Blue Ridge. Her destination, Missouri. But more importantly, she now knew she wasn't alone. There were others, names on Cross's board, who might still be breathing, still fighting. And one by one, she'd find them. They tried to bury Echo Blue. They thought the scars would fade. They were wrong. The past doesn't stay buried when one of its ghosts comes back to finish what was started. And this time, she wasn't just surviving. She was hunting. Because when you laugh at a scarred woman, you never think to ask where those scars came from. But sometimes those scars are maps, battle lines etched in flesh. And when the right person sees them, everything changes. The world just didn't know yet, but it would. The clouds over Georgia rolled in low and dark as the funeral began. A quiet grove near a forgotten veterans cemetery served as the final setting. The one place that Mara Dillon, against all odds, had requested. It was not the sound of taps that filled the air, but the whisper of wind through pines and the murmurs of those gathered, strangers, veterans, and people who had once called her an outsider. Now they stood still, heads bowed, eyes locked on the simple wooden box that held her ashes. 3 months earlier, Mara had vanished from her small cabin on the edge of the mountain pass. No one knew where she went, not even Levi, who had grown close enough to her to call her family. She left behind no goodbye, no note, just her gear, her dog tags, and a torn photograph of her old unit. Levi had found it tucked inside her gun locker, next to her folded uniform, faded but clean, with the Echo Phantom insignia still stitched into the shoulder. The truth had come out slowly, pulled like stubborn roots from deep, frozen ground. Her name hadn't always been Mara Dillon. Before the burn scars, before the mountains, before the world moved on and forgot her. Her real name had been Commander Marin DeLacy, a classified specter in U.S. military files that were never meant to be opened. She was buried figuratively once, after Operation Nightwalk, when the government erased her from existence following her insubordination during a failed Black Ops extraction. She had refused to leave without her wounded men. That choice cost her everything. Her career, her identity, her place in the world. But the men she saved lived, and some of them were standing here now. Levi stood near the front, his suit wrinkled, eyes bloodshot, clutching the shell casing she had once used to teach him how to center his aim. His mother held his hand gently, watching him with an ache that only deepened as she looked toward the group of veterans now speaking in hushed tones. She told me once, Levi whispered, that she didn't want people crying for her. She said tears were like bullets. Use them wisely or not at all. An older man stepped forward, his hair silver, but his posture still military straight. It was Sergeant Hank Barrow, the Marine who had recognized her tattoo months before at the range. His voice was low but powerful. Most of us wouldn't be here if it weren't for her. When the mission collapsed, Command wrote us off. But she didn't. She hauled me through that forest with a broken leg, 30 miles through enemy territory, after dragging 2 others on a sled made from a door and a parachute. She didn't sleep. She didn't quit. She just kept going until we were safe. Then she disappeared, like smoke and wind. He paused, then pulled something from his coat pocket. A patch. The Echo Phantom insignia, hand-stitched and worn. He placed it gently on the wooden box. She was more than a soldier. She was our shadow in the night, our anchor when everything else went to hell. After the service, they built a stone cairn next to a white oak sapling. It would grow with time, just as her memory would. Plaque simple and unassuming. Read, Marin DeLacy, 1969 to 2025. She went silent to protect the loudest truth. Levi stood long after the others left, watching the sun peek through the clouds. He pulled his coat tighter, thinking about the last time he saw her, smiling faintly as she adjusted his grip on a training rifle, telling him that scars didn't make a person weak. They made them readable, honest. The woman who had once been mocked for her burns, dismissed for her quiet ways, forgotten by her country, was now remembered, not because of what she said, but what she did. Weeks later, Levi returned to the shooting range. People were quieter now. Kinder. The mocking had stopped. Lane 6 had been unofficially retired. A framed photo hung above it, showing Mara, stoic, sharp-eyed, her Echo Phantom tattoo barely visible. Below it, a plaque read, "She never missed." And not just the target. In his hands, Levi held the same Glock she had trained him with. He adjusted his stance just like she taught. Breathed in, exhaled, fired. 12 clean hits. In the distance, a flag snapped in the wind. Mara Dillon, no, Marin DeLacy was finally home. And this time they all remembered. Subscribe to Silent Stories for more untold truths, one voice at a time.